Welcome back. This is Jeffrey. We are on 14 years later, and I wanted to discuss today a topic which is to me extremely important. And there are many words and ideas and definitions and meanings which need to be clarified, I believe. So let me say first off, because eventually humans are going to respond with issues of legality, whether legality be nation understanding or like national understanding. You know, I was born in the USA, and I'm American, and though my father and my mother were born in a nation in the Middle East, in the same nation in the Middle East, and so I am in my understanding, a first generation American. And there's a difference to me because of my religious understanding between, for example, national law and religious law in many instances. For example, in the United States, I have a bachelor's degree in history and a minor in political science, and I've been to law school, though I haven't finished a semester. So with the understanding of the United States having a constitution, and there's essentially a separation of church and state. So when I bring up like national law versus religious law, I just want this concept understood because, you know, all won't have the same level of education, for example, or like the same understanding academically, actually. So many will. I'm not trying to say like I'm superior in this sense, but this is where I'm coming from when I bring up nation, because I'm American. I am American. So I wanted to discuss several issues, but since the title, I hope I kept the same title when I actually published the video. But I believe the title, I wrote this on an envelope, on the back of like an envelope for the electricity bill. But so I believe the title is Islam, Shia, and Ali in American English explained by an extremist. Okay, so let me begin this properly. Okay, so if we're talking about Islam, the first issue, and you know, I'm using English language, so and I want to stick exclusively, if possible, to American English. The first issue, and I would have to say, you know, apologies to God for even trying to explain such an issue. But if we're talking Islam, the most fundamental, the only fundamental understanding of Islam is the exclusive, entire, actual worship of God. There is in Islam to be, understand what I'm saying, there is to be no worship of any human. There is to be no worship of any angel. And there is to be no worship of any, what they call like, I guess, so I'm not using exclusively, I guess, English language, but there's no worship of any jinn or, you know, anything of the sort. So you must, to be a correct, proper Muslim, you must only worship God. Exclusively, entirely, only. We don't have the words as humans in any language. All won't be capable to describe the reality correctly, but we attempt to. Okay, and this is the central understanding of Islam. So there is to be no worship of Muhammad. There is to be no worship of Jesus Christ. Okay? And I'm saying these two now. Okay, now understand this. Adam and Eve may not be worshipped. So none of your ancestors, no humans, no angels, no jinn, the earth may not be worshipped. Only God. Okay? So when I say I'm an extremist, when I say I'm an extremist and I am trying to be exact, okay? And I am essentially trying to be especially accurate, with this concept I'm explaining. Okay. So the existence of a Muslim must only be to worship God. Okay? Now, so let me explain a definition first. What do I mean by extremist? Okay, so I am not, and I never intend to be, and except for a single instance, I have never been actually a criminal. Okay, now, what crime, what type of criminal have I been? Okay, in terms of like actual judgment by like national law. I believe I pled guilty once to a speeding violation while driving a motor vehicle, like a car, right? So I went like, I think it was like 10 miles an hour above a like 30 mile an hour speed limit. And what happened was, I believe I specifically didn't want to hire an attorney. And for whatever reason, I had some trouble I was going through. I just decided, if I remember correctly, I decided to plead guilty and pay, I think it was like $200 something. And I didn't realize this would go on my record for insurance, like car insurance purposes, things of the sort. Okay, so whether I have been charged or not with any crime in addition, in any way of being a criminal, I have never been judged guilty of anything except a speeding violation. And it wasn't 10 miles an hour above 30 miles an hour. I was going like 40 miles an hour in a 30, which isn't like too fast. It's like 40 miles an hour is sort of closer, or was then closer to like the regular speed limit on different streets. I went on a street which was, for whatever reason, somewhat slower because I was close to a bus, like where the drivers of the buses, the city buses, the metropolitan buses, they park, and then like I guess they do repairs there also. I'm not sure on the buses, but I guess this is why. And it was like a 2-lane, like one way each street. So it was like usually like about 5 miles or like 10 miles under the usual speed limit. So okay, so when I say I'm an extremist, this doesn't mean I support who are criminal. So I don't support. You can be an extremist and not support criminals. So I don't support criminal terrorists. I don't support, evil humans. I did not whatsoever support the September 11th attacks or any other type of killing. And when I say I'm an extremist, this is because I am extreme in my belief of worship of God only. That actually covers what I'm trying to say. But I do believe, for instance, in the 10 Commandments, and I do believe thou shalt not kill. So I do not believe humans are allowed actually to kill other humans or another human. And when I say I'm like very extreme and I'm an extremist, this is because in my understanding, I could be wrong, but like a given facet of what makes this the case, I do believe humans are created in the image of God. Even though we don't seem to all appear the same, and we have male and female, adult and child, for instance, but we are created in the image of God, and I believe in a single understanding of the concept of why we're not allowed to kill. This is not the ultimate understanding, but since we are created in the image of God, we may not kill another human. But the exact reason is because God has said we may not kill, has commanded we may not kill. So, and this was revealed to the Jews when I'm speaking about Islam. But there's Islam in the Quran, as far as I understand. Islam, Judaism, Christianity are discussed. I haven't read too much of the Quran, and I want to become eventually I guess it's called like a memorizer. It starts with the letter H in a different language, but like a memorizer of the Quran, which would be really, really amazing for me because I have really poor memory, and I repeat things like frequently. So, okay, when I say I'm an extremist, what I'm saying is I spend a disproportionate amount of time only worshiping God. Like all won't have been anything except me worshiping God. I do not believe to worship any human ever in any instance. And if it seems as such, I'm possibly faking, pretending, and trying to stay as a living organism, because I may be attacked. Okay, so I'm getting long-winded, but there's a reason for this. Okay, so this was point 1, and I'm gonna make 6 points overall. And I hope this is understood in the context of, me as Jeffrey on my channel, and not as any ultimate authority. But this is important because there are humans who act as, for example, clerics, and there are humans who act as, for example, leaders, such as political leaders of nations. And there are humans who, in a sense, fulfill the 5 pillars of Islam to their, greatest ability, and they aren't, a political leader or whatever the reality may be. So, just to give you some different examples. Anyways, so point 2, okay. In the United Kingdom, in Englishman Nation, in, sorry that I say Englishman Nation, sorry which I'm saying Englishman Nation, but in English language on the continent of Europe, and I'm not trying to pick on anyone, but I believe there are several Pakistani or Pakistani descended individuals, and this isn't only in Europe and England, but I wanted to bring up some issues about like a specific individual and a response at a distance. It's available to me on YouTube because I watch YouTube personally. I am a consumer of YouTube, and I enjoy YouTube and have for many years. There's the concept of, and I'm explaining this at a very basic logical level, okay? As an extremist, not as someone who's using knowledge or memorization or understanding or reading to have explained, okay? So these Paki individuals, these Pakistani individuals, or Pakistani descended individuals are like pushing this, what I feel is like an anti-Shia agenda. And as far as I understand, so I don't worship any human, but as far as I understand, there is a human who was, in a sense, an authority, who I believe God allowed to be a prophet and messenger, and and they say peace be upon him. But so his name was Muhammad, and he had explained certain things which were explained by him as a human, aside of what the Quran was, which was allowed to humans in our understanding of God and given by an angel, okay? Which is different. Remember this, given by an angel and to a human, and now to us as a sort of like audience, in a religious sense. So we're talking about a concept that I do not worship those concepts. Like I do not worship the Quran, I do not worship any angel, and I do not worship any human. I only worship God. Okay? So this is very extremely important. Do not tell me that in Islam, God handed to Muhammad the Quran. Okay? So this is a fact. We're talking factually. And in Islam, we are only allowed to worship God. Okay? So now, these are distinctions which are important in a logical sense. Okay, but just to keep this, or just to not keep this, but sort of keep this and make this somewhat more lighthearted, I believe in the Quran, my understanding is if you are a Muslim, allowed 4 wives as a Muslim male. I think when the issue is nice guys finish last, and what happens is when certain males or like a male begins to act like a bully, depending on how good he is. I think women tend to enjoy the male, or will actually understand the male as being less asexual and more of a heterosexual, in a sense, if he is understanding to be heterosexual, and will be more attracted to him. So I don't know what to say to you, except please stop bullying in a time of war Muslims who understand Shia Islam, which there's only Islam, but Shia understanding, if there's like a viewpoint we have. And my English is somewhat limited as well, even though I am my second language. And since I was like a toddler, I've been speaking English, or like beginning to speak English, and I was born in America. But so yes, the reason I bring up for Wive, there isn't like an unlimited number of wives allowed, as far as I understand, to Muslims. So it's like a quarter, like a single wife is like a quarter of the wives you get. Please stop like bullying like a different population, and like forcing someone like me to say, okay, well, if you're gonna do this, and I understand your psychology, do I have to like train and get ready? And like I explained, I'm an extremist, and get a wife among the women of Pakistan. Think about this, please. Okay, like understand. Don't push, please. Okay, and I'm saying please like a third instance. Okay, so because like being cordial is important, but and yes, yes, you can take this as it's not nonviolent, because I believe like my mother is a Middle Eastern Dravidian, from like I have on authority, genetically, that my mother her genome is Middle Eastern Dravidian, and if I understand correctly, I'm not sure of the history, but if I understand correctly, like from before, there was the movement from, I'm just saying the Middle East, but from the Middle East into South Asia. So, okay, so I am, on my mother's side, South Asian connected, actually. So yes, please stop having like nuclear weapons and a high population number, and like many like very capable humans, which I enjoy Pakistani humans to a very large extent, but please stop being like a bully, and not understanding what the reality of war is, because like I'll give you a two-side issue, okay? You may either be, because of how you're behaving, you may either be on the side of the USA and Israel versus Iran, or you may be on the side of Iran versus the USA and Israel. And I will not take a side, because I don't intend to be a bully, okay? So I am sort of what would be understood historically in the US as a conscientious objector, okay, to any type of warfare in a legal sense. Okay, but why do I bring this up? I'm sort of pulling the leg of those individuals, in a sense. What can I say? Iran has like good wrestlers, and I'm defending Shia humans, so I guess I'm pulling your leg, but I'm not a wrestler, okay? So anyways, is this very dry humor or something that's not humorous whatsoever? Okay, so yes, please take as a threat, or what would it be? Yeah, a threat or like a warning. I will, if need be, to like make you relax, get a wife among Pakistani women, to be my wife, like in Islam, if you do not stop, okay? Because like I've explained what the issue is that you're doing. Okay, so, which you're doing. Okay, so point 3. Okay, humans understand, if you're trying to cause humans to convert or revert to Islam, or to understand Islam, or if you're correctly trying to, more correctly, like higher correctly, trying to get humans to worship God, and you're explaining this through the religion Islam, which God has allowed. You please understand, humans need chronology, okay? So I explained this in a different video, or I brought this concept up in a different video, Muhammad, if I'm understanding correctly at the moment, is being understood as like the first prophet of Islam because of his connection to the Quran. And I'm sure many of you have repeatedly said Muhammad is the seal of the prophets. Okay. And I haven't read enough of the Quran, but essentially, if I translate this correctly, and I hope I'm not too unforgiven, but he's like the last prophet in Islam. Okay. Please explain to humans correctly. God has allowed the first prophet in Islam to actually have been Adam, okay? And his wife was Eve, or is in history, or we call it religion, but in history, Eve. Okay, so this is important. Many humans are thinking this is like, because Muhammad is discussed, as like a prophet and a messenger, and his name as a human is being brought up in religious prayers. I think many humans are understanding Muhammad in Islam as like a equal to Jesus Christ in Christianity. Okay, Jesus Christ in Christianity at the moment is being worshipped as the Son of God, if I understand correctly, and sort of in the Holy Trinity as like sort of the same as God, except in like human flesh. So I'm not trying to butcher the understanding of Christianity, but if I understand correctly, in the Quran, a Muslim cannot have been, I've seen like different translations. I'm not saying there are different Qurans, but I've seen different words used. So a Muslim cannot be, and I don't remember the surah, my memory is really bad, but a Muslim cannot be a friend, nor an ally, nor like a protected human of Jews and Christians, okay? Without having been or like become a Jew or a Christian, because they are, allies to themselves, essentially. Okay, so I understand there's like an extreme amount of power within the Jews, within the Christians, within different religious populations. But if you're understanding accurately Islam through the Quran, you may not allow them, or I would ask you, if possible, would you please not allow humans to understand Islam as Muhammad is a sort of figure like Jesus, where he's the end and ultimate authority, after which there is no authority. Okay, Muhammad was a prophet. In Islam, we understand Jesus Christ as a prophet and a human, and both were humans. But so the first prophet was Adam, and he was created by God, different than being born, okay? And his wife was also created by God, different than being born, okay? And, they talk about, what seems to be a combination of being created and born, though if I understand correctly, Jesus Christ is viewed as having been born also, as was Muhammad. Okay, so though the issue of father and mother are different than what, for instance, I am as a human. So I was born of so not to get too like medical, but so I'll use a different word, the seed and the egg of a human father and a human mother. So just bringing up this issue, but Adam is who begins as the first prophet in Islam. And if we understand the last prophet in Islam, this is important for why I'm bringing up Shia and Ali. So, and I'll say at this point, Imam Ali. Okay, there's a reason I explained as such. Okay, so this is very important because you're going to like the Quran, because the Quran, we're saying, is given by God and delivered by an angel, right? So and we talk about like religious law or religious legislation or religious understanding and human understanding and human writing, and even hadith, if I'm saying correctly, is different than the Quran. Okay, for this reason, because we believe God allowed the Quran. Okay, so but there's a difference between God allowing the Quran and God having said in words to Muhammad what the Quran is. And there's a difference between an angel having explained than God having explained. So there's like, it's not like complicated if you're like an extremist at understanding the logic, and you can just pull apart very slowly and easily the concepts involved. But for many individuals, you're confusing them. And I may be confusing at the moment, but I needed to make this video. I need to make this video so humans can eventually, as as they continue to live, slowly understand better what the concepts are. Okay, and I'll give at the end at the end of the video like a more succinct explanation. So, anyways, so you can understand it like more quickly. So you can understand what I'm saying more quickly. Okay, so now the fourth point, point 4. Okay, so in reality, what has happened historically is Islam began, as we understand it, through who Arab genome individuals, and through Arabic language, not in the sense of began the way I just said, because if we're talking about Adam and we're talking about Eve, there's like a difference. But when we talk about the last prophet and the Quran, Islam to the masses of humans began to be better understood after Islam was given in Arabic language, or like began to move forward in Arabic language. Though Islam is not actually limited to Arabic language, and there's a reason for this. If Islam was exclusively limited to Arabic language, then a human who only speaks English their entire lives cannot live and have become a Muslim. Okay, the issue is actually, and I hate to bring up this word, but time. Okay, so there was gradually Islam was allowed to different populations, different humans, different groups. Okay, so Islam is actually, they talk about surrendering to the will of God. Correct. Islam is the worship in another explanation. Islam is the worship of God alone. And like, apologies to God, where like I as a human would ever be capable to accurately explain what God allows. But we try. That's why this is why there are clerics and different governments and individuals and groups who have, I hate to use the word struggle because of like the Holocaust and Mein Kampf and Adolf Hitler, but humans who have struggled in the past. I know, sorry if I say like irrelevant things, but I have a different background than some individuals, and I've like studied history, and I focused on like Europe and like the Holocaust and world wars and everything. So, okay, when we talk about the Shia, we have to understand there were Noah's sons, and this is explained in the Quran as far as I understand, because some of this I'm learning from Google instead of actually looking at the Quran, which I have at least a single copy of the Quran. So there are 4 sons of Noah according to the Quran, if I understand correctly, and 3 were on the ark with him, and a single, if I understand correctly, and a single of his sons went on top of a mountain. So, okay, a lot of humans and people and individuals and groups won't admit this, but they go crazy over like Noah being brought up or Noah's sons because they're like terrified of extinction. Okay, But the Middle East, if we understand through what we have at the least of the Torah, if it's not the actual Torah, which, okay, I'm not going to argue, but about what's corrupt and what isn't. But we do have, for example, the Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament. And in the Bible, for instance, even if you are, I'm not saying to be an ally of the Jews or the Christians. Okay, what I'm saying is you have to understand the Bible is not commanding evil. This is a central concept to Islam. Okay, now if you're explaining the exact wording is not exactly what was given to humans earlier, to religious humans earlier, like, okay, but it's not like the Holy Bible cannot be understood in Islam or like the Torah or the Talmud, or I have a limited understanding of those books, but or those writing. They're not an evil concept, okay? They're relative to our human understanding of God, okay? And I think this is understood, but there's like a limit to me speaking, for like an hour in my house and human speaking in public, and trying to make a point very quickly. So I understand this. I'm just bringing up the concept for anyone else who may be starting to understand. Okay, so I'm getting long-winded with point 4, but so there's the concept of a racial pejorative, a racial slur used against humans who are now Iranian predominantly, because it's called ajam. See, I've used, I think, like at least 2 different words which aren't English, but it's essentially, if I understand, it's where the language is not in history by essentially Iranian humans, which are different than Persians, because Persians are a group in Iran. They're a human population in Iran, not the entirety of Iran. So the concept, or like the word ajam, or like the idea of ajam, was applied to as disproportionately Semites who are Iranian, so like descended from Shem, but also there's like a different son of Noah who lives in Iran. So I've mentioned my mother is ancestrally, as far as I understand, and I have on authority, apologies to God if I say as such, but my mother is Dravidian ancestrally, or herself, but Middle Eastern. Okay, so the transference, or like a transference into, which is necessary, which has been, it's not unnecessary, will have been viewed as unnecessary, but which was, which was extremely important for Islam to continue. A transference of Islam was through Indo-European language, at the point specifically of Farsi, I guess a language of the Persians, or like of a province in Iran, or like the Persian language. I have to get more specific. I don't know if like Persians have like different languages, or did, if they're like extinct languages from Persia. But I guess now it's being called like Persian, I guess possibly humans are saying Iranian already as like the language name, but it comes from, I guess, the province Fars. So anyways, this is a point where Islam was being translated from, I guess, Afro-Asiatic. Is this correct? Is this the correct family name? But from basically like Semitic languages to Indo-European languages, and the Iranians had a struggle against Arabs, which eventually, with, let's say, thousands of years, will have been understood as correct to not only hold in the Semitic languages Islam. Okay, because when you concentrate religious understanding in a certain language or area, geographic region, evil humans have a higher capability to attack the sort of like, so we're talking essentially like Mecca, Medina, the Arabian Peninsula. But humans have an easier time overcoming geography and training, for example, like the hot temperature or like sand or the geographic position on the earth of where Mecca and Medina are. So there's a transference into Indo-European language, not the only transference, but a transference through Ajam, who are humans, essentially Iranian, who are not learning to speak Arabic. They do not, as the Iraqi, as the Syrian, as the Lebanese, speak Arabic, essentially, generally. I mean, some do, and some will have been understood to have learned, though into South Asia and into Europe, there is a branch of language which, if we understand, I have to refer to the Tower of Babel. I hope it's called Babel. I don't know if I ever pronounce anything correctly. Babel. God made humans to have different languages, okay? And essentially to prevent evil. Because I believe the words in the Holy Bible are, nothing will be past their ability or what they can do if this was not the case, or if this is not the case. So the reality of what Shia are, also you have to understand in terms of language and transference of Islam. Because if we're saying Islam is a true religion, and a religion of God, a true religion, and a correct understanding, it's not higher to say, well, like Arabic should be the language of like, no. Humans are to understand God and Islam, and should they understand a language spoken by a prophet and a messenger, again, peace be upon him, Muhammad, great, good, okay? But the extremist understanding is the worship of God alone, which is essentially an explanation of it's not exactly, but it's actually close to a pillar of Islam, okay? If we're talking about the 5 pillars of Islam. So, and I should say, I have actually exactly, I believe, said with I believe 2 witnesses, or like possibly, I believe 2 witnesses. I have said if I'm understanding the word correctly, the shahada, again, another word which isn't in English, but the belief in God, which Islam allows. So, and we talk about Muhammad as a prophet and messenger. So I have said this in the past. This isn't like something recent which has happened. This was in my early 20s, and I'm now in my late 30s. Okay, so there was a transference into Indo-European languages with the racial pejorative, for instance, Ajam being used versus the Iranians. And this difference in differentiation is important for the spread of Islam, because now, for instance, we see Islam in, for example, where Englishmen are in Europe, disproportionately in the United Kingdom, there's a very high acceptance of the allowance of worship of God through Islam. Okay, so this is an Indo-European language which is being used to allow the continued worship of God in Islam. But we have a very earlier Indo-European language in essentially Farsi, or like Old Persian, or whatever. I have to like get better at linguistics and like history. But so we have this reality happening very early, just like we have a very early reality of Cyrus the Great. And believe me, I'm not a proponent of any king of Iran, who has spoken about Cyrus the Great in the sense on television, or in audio recordings. So recently in history, I'm not their proponent, but so I do believe there is a reason Cyrus the Great and his army were So Cyrus the Great was explained, I believe, in Book of Isaiah, in the Holy Bible, in the Old Testament. And I'll bring up a second book, because when we talk about, I guess, the Gospel according to Luke, in the Holy Bible, Jesus Christ begins his ministry, if I understand, with a reference to Prophet Isaiah, or I'm not sure if he read Prophet Isaiah's book in like the old, what is now the Old Testament. But I'll bring up, should I dare, I'll bring up Ezra, also the book of Ezra, not Ezra in Babylon, but also Ezra in Babylon, who was a Jew of the Jews in the Babylonian captivity, who were allowed to return to Jerusalem and to Israel, sorry. But I'm not sure, Israel or Jerusalem, because I'm not sure where exactly each individual went, of course. But so yeah, I'm not beginning a ministry like at the moment, so I'm just speaking in case this isn't obvious. Now I'll say, please, I have compared myself to Jesus Christ, okay, and have like say it like with like truthful intent, and like force me to go get a wife from Pakistan, to like sort of calm you in your like anger. Anyways, so what makes this important as the next point? Okay, so we have Iran, and I'm not sure exactly of the Islamic history, but we have a language, interlanguage transference in the Middle East with Iran. And then let's go like sort of, let's like return to when the Prophet Muhammad, the Prophet and Messenger Muhammad was alive, when he was a living organism. You know, before he did, and this is important for understanding what Shia are explaining, but before he met his, let's say, untimely death. So Ali, his cousin, his paternal cousin, you know, their fathers were brothers, is a Muslim, and he is not an unbeliever. Okay, this is our understanding, what we're allowed to realize. While Ali was, and I'm not saying his full name, because I have a bad memory. I have an unusually bad memory. But Ali does not meet death as an unbeliever. Okay, and we could say Ali was, I'm not sure, because humans are saying different things that I haven't read, but Ali could possibly have been the earliest male believer of Islam. This could be the reality, but in my understanding with Ali, and I don't want to get to point 6 yet. Okay, but Ali does many important things while the Prophet is alive, and also after he is alive, but earlier when he is alive also. And Ali possibly lays down his life not for Muhammad, okay? Eventually after this will have been explained, this is like possibly thousands of years early, not for Muhammad, okay? For the understanding, factually, Muhammad is a prophet and messenger of God, okay? So, and he allows Muhammad to escape by sleeping in, if I understand correctly, the bed where Muhammad will have been captured and possibly will have met execution, you know, like a death penalty, capital punishment sort of thing, by humans who are unbelievers. Okay, now, so this is really important, but you know, obviously, again, being an extremist, Ali, we have evidence and we believe, we are not unbelievers, and we desire to continue to understand. Ali was a believer, or like is in history, will have been understood, would in any instance have been understood to be a believer of God earlier than his death and earlier than many humans understand. Okay, so if we're talking about relative to, like, for instance, the Quran, Ali is among the earliest humans to believe in the worship of God relative to when the Quran was allowed. Tell me this isn't factually true and have been correct. Please, actually. Because I'm not saying he's the earliest. He isn't the prophet and messenger Muhammad. But, and he isn't a prophet. Ali is not a prophet. At any instance in Shia Islam, any Shia who tells you or has you try to believe or explains Ali as a prophet is incorrect entirely. Okay, I'm saying this explicitly. Okay, now, but he is of the earliest Muslims after the Quran. Okay, and remember, Islam begins with Adam as the first prophet. Okay, but Ali is also one of the earliest Muslims after the last prophet in Islam. Okay, so his cousin, his own cousin. So we're already seeing in the Quran parallels to, for example, Jesus Christ, who's I believe in Surah Maryam, this is written, but Jesus Christ's mother, Mary in English, Maryam, but she, if I understand correctly, her aunt had a son who was in English John, and I believe John the Baptist. Yeah, is his name in Arabic? I forget, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to like blaspheme. I just have a bad memory. So a sort of relative, and we have also evidence in which, Muhammad has a cousin who was an earlier than usual, after the Quran is allowed to humans, believer in Islam and Muslim. Okay, so when you denigrate humans who believe in an extreme believer of God, you're doing a disservice to the entire human population. Trust me, and I'll get to this point in a second. Now, if you would please, yes or no, do you deny Ali was a believer in God and Ali was a Muslim earlier than his death? Okay, so depending on this, you can either, I guess, stop being evil, or you can move on. But I'm gonna take a quick break. The diabetes is kicking in again, and I will head to the restroom before point 6. Okay, so continuing with point 5, and I will have been an accursed individual if I do not testify personally. Jeffrey, 14 years later, but if I do not testify, obviously in the belief of God, but if I do not testify, Ali, cousin to Muhammad, was a believer of God earlier than his death, and was a believer of the Quran allowed by God, was a believer in Adam, I assume Adam as the first prophet, and Muhammad, his cousin, as the last prophet. But there's a point I should bring up before I go on to point 6. Humans have never been capable to live, and this is a pillar of Islam relative to the oneness of God. Okay, humans have never, all won't have been capable to correctly live as a single individual, beginning with God's creation, Adam. There was also Eve. There is and will have been, and you would correctly need to understand eventually, Adam is incapable without Eve. So we have, for example, Jesus Christ, who we believe, I believe, sorry, we is different, but possibly we also, I believe was a human. He also had a sort of relative, a type of cousin in John the Baptist, if I understand correctly. He had different apostles. he had the Jews. Okay, Muhammad, and I know you're aware of certain terms, or I'm aware that you know certain terms of like the early believers of Muhammad as the last prophet of Islam. But prophet and messenger of Islam is usually the explanation. But so you do have to understand a certain issue. Okay, Muhammad's, if we're going back to the Ten Commandments, okay, whether we understand what the Ten Commandments are exactly, or whether the Torah is understood exactly, or the Gospel is understood exactly, or whatever the case may be, Muhammad, I would imagine, I believe, had honored his father and his mother. And this is in the Quran. And he was an extremist, in my understanding of Muhammad, in honoring his father and his mother, who unfortunately passed away like when he was young. Okay, he was born with limited time with what his father and mother are, but he still continued, to honor his father and his mother. And if I understand correctly, of humans, all won't alive at the moment Muhammad, I guess, was even born, but like earlier than he was born, and after he had even passed away and met his death, no individual will have honored their father and their mother at the moment in history as high as Muhammad. Okay. And because Muhammad obviously accepted the command of God. And this does not mean, the meaning is not relative to the Jews in an exact sense, okay? I'm speaking about Islam, even though the Ten Commandments, we go back to the Jews, and we talk about Moses, and also previous prophet. I guess Moses is considered a prophet and messenger also in Islam, if I'm using prophet and messenger differently and correctly. But so there's one issue that I need to bring up. There's a difference between an individual's blood and a relative, and the concept of, the reality of thou shalt honor thy father and thy mother. Okay, so Muhammad's father, blood to Muhammad, had a relative who was his brother, okay? I do not consider, this is my personal understanding, I do not consider brother and sister to be your blood, okay? I believe they're within family under father and mother, but they are a type of relative, okay? So going even further, Ali was an extended relative of Muhammad, okay? But the father of Muhammad had the same father and mother which the father of Ali had as parents, okay? So please stop being evil. Do not dishonor the father of Muhammad nor the mother of Muhammad, because this would be, in my opinion, though Muhammad was a human, his father was a human, his mother was a human, I only believe in the worship of God, but since God allowed Muhammad to be a prophet and messenger, and the last prophet and messenger in Islam, it's inappropriate, it's actually rude to dishonor the father of Muhammad, the mother of Muhammad. Because think about this, is very logically easy to understand. Would the prophet of, the parent, the father of Muhammad, have been a good human? I assume so. Okay, I'm not saying he was the prophet and messenger of God who Muhammad was, but he was the father of Muhammad. Okay, so if you think about this logically, would the father of Muhammad have wanted in like, you know, in the back of his mind, in the front of his mind, would the, you know, in his brain, if he had thought about this logically, would the father of Muhammad have wanted the son of his brother to also have a religious title, should he have ever come to this realization while alive or after, like earlier after he met death? And, you know, peace be upon him also, the father of Muhammad. I think it's very easy to accept for me. It's unusually easy for me to accept. The father of Muhammad would have loved, he would have lived for the opportunity to have actually had his brother have a son who also had a religious title, or like also was an early believer and wasn't an unbeliever, in addition to his own son being a prophet and messenger of God, the last prophet of Islam. So I don't think the father of Muhammad would have wanted the son of his brother, or like a son of his brother to be an unbeliever, and sorry to say this, to enter hell as an unbeliever, for instance. Or, you know, we talk about bringing different religious reality in, or to be in purgatory, if we're talking about Catholicism. I think he would have wanted, had he correctly understood, and he possibly could have, he would have wanted the son, like a son of his brother, to enter heaven, to not to have been revered, because only God should be worshipped, but only God will have been worshipped and would have been worshipped accurately. But so I don't think Muhammad's father was a jealous, evil human, okay? And especially towards his own relative, his brother, and his brother's son, okay? So when we talk about thou shalt honor thy father and thy mother in the 10 Commandments, you're implying pretty directly and explicitly the father of Muhammad should be jealously guarding the reality of Muhammad only. This is becoming increasingly the Sunni understanding, though all won't have enjoyed this explanation, but should have jealously guarded the like true prophet and messenger of God. Okay, we're only talking about the worshiping of God, okay? And we're talking about a prophet and a messenger, whether last or not. Now, so why do I bring this up? This isn't, please, I don't want to use a cuss word. I don't want to say, you know, a child born without a father, in like, it starts with a B in English. But so please don't call me as such. And it's not, I'm not making a perversion either. This is these are humans who we understand as holy. You know, they're holy. They're not like jealous. They're not they're not like simple clerics in a sense. They're very high and higher than simple like clerics, okay, in terms of being holy. So why do I bring this up? Going on to point 6, okay? Okay, if you understand Shia correctly, if you understand Islam in the sense the Shia are understanding, I guess the Sufi also, I don't know, the Sunni are different. There's a title which, in my understanding, is allowed to Ali, cousin of the Prophet and Messenger of God, Muhammad. Peace be upon both of those individuals. Now, what is this title? Okay, the title is awarded, if I understand, to Muhammad, to Ali, and is allowed, is more accurate. But so he gets the title of Imam. Okay, now, what's the point of having this title? To make it to make the argument very forcefully fast, they're gonna say don't do this, but let's look at Christianity, okay? Imam has relation to, for instance, saint. So, for instance, or it's closer to likely apostle, but so like, for example, we have like saint, a human named Saul, who is eventually Saint Paul in Christianity. He does much of the writing in the New Testament, if I understand correctly. And he is a martyr in Rome, where he is, I guess, mutilated by beheading. So this human was not an evil human, Saint Paul, okay, in Christianity. But we have an issue, so to draw parallels, we have an issue where, like, so for instance, Orthodox Christians and Catholics believe there are saints. And I personally agree, there are saints. But if I understand correctly, I'm not trying to mischaracterize, but the Protestants do not believe in saints, okay? Not that they would say, not a scenario in which Protestants would argue Saint Paul, or so let's say Paul, as being an evil individual. You know, he's like holy as a human, but different than Jesus Christ in Christian understanding. But they do not believe in saints, as far as I understand. Okay, now, and if we're going to point to history and we're going to be factual, because I've seen on YouTube repeatedly, you know, the atheists Mao Zedong and Stalin had killed a disproportionate number of humans, or had caused them to actually die. And then I believe Adolf Hitler was characterized as a Christian, and he had killed millions of humans. So let's just put it this way. For example, since like the fall of Constantinople in the 1400s to the Ottomans, and what I would say is the resulting around the late 1400s, I guess like the 1450s and then the 1490s, with the beginning of the conquest and colonization of North America and South America. You know, there's like the whole history of like trying to go to India or whatever, like the earth is round, the earth is flat sort of deal. But if we look at what happened actually, the humans who are of the groups which are like a higher percentage of like Orthodox Christians and Catholics, compared to Protestant background, the Protestant Christians who do not also believe in saints, if I understand correctly, like if we talk about like North America, if we talk about the United States and Canada, I'm not trying to say a mean word, but they try to wipe out of existence, actually, in a sense. I'm not trying to lie, but I guess the Native Americans. Whereas with like Catholic, or like, you know, if they're not true Christians, if they're not true Catholic because they were like violent or whatever the scenario may have been, or like too aggressive or actually did kill, but the Catholic derived conquerors were more likely to mix sexually and take wife of the Amerindians. And they were less likely to try to disproportionately wipe them out of existence, to genocide them. And the Orthodox, and you might say this is because of geographic location or whatnot. I've heard the argument, you know, they're more southern, the Catholics, generally compared to the Protestants in Europe. And their appearance is like closer to the Amerindians because of like darker hair, darker skin, and darker eyes, usually, unusually high percentage compared to like Northern Europeans, who are like more likely to have been Protestant, even though there are Catholics in northern portions of Europe. But so, and then like with the Orthodox Christians, we're talking disproportionately to the East, and they didn't have as much access to, I guess, the Mediterranean Sea and like the Atlantic Ocean. But the reality, okay, if we're talking history, if we're talking truth and a fact, the reality is, So let me put it the opposite way with a lie. Let me be a liar again. The Catholics and the Orthodox Christians wiped out as many of the Amerindians as possible and genocided as many of the Amerindians as possible. And the Protestants who do not believe in saints, those nations and those populations did the least to wipe out Amerindians, Native Americans. Okay, now we have an instance, I'm just drawing a parallel because, if you're gonna be, so my mother, thou shalt honor thy father and thy mother. My mother personally had expressed to me in actual words, she had a love for Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi, in many instances since I was a child. I believe when I was a child, when I was an adult, not like repeatedly, but, and I believe she had watched Ben Kingsley in the movie about Gandhi, and she had said he was a very big man. And I believe there was like, it's possibly because, I love Islam. So there's a limit to peace and non-aggression and non-violence. And I don't believe to kill, but if I have to use disproportionate force in like, for instance, in getting a wife of a population to like calm the population down and prove what I am as a heterosexual and a believer and a man, I will have done so even in a time of war, even if I am a slave, even if I am a genocide victim, you'll see. And for instance, the Jews who survived the Holocaust, those individuals also did not give up, okay? So remember this. But in a time of warfare, you're saying that, so why do I bring up Gandhi, sorry. Gandhi was not using force disproportionately, and he was trying to use words in a peaceful sense, and he was shot to death by, if I understand correctly, he was a Hindu, and he was shot to death by a Hindu zealot. This is what I've heard. Okay, so to honor my mother, to honor my father, this won't be repeated, at the very least easily, and actually will not have been repeated, at least on me, because I'm my father and mother's only child. And I'm asking you again, please do not attempt to genocide me. Do not attempt to make me a slave, despite what I may say or do or what you think. And in a time of warfare, I'm not gonna let you say what you want to say without having responded with truth and fact, and also being a liar, So anything to overpower you, okay? Now, so, you won't have genocided my father and mother easily by getting rid of me, okay? And my mother's passed away, so you won't have genocided my mother. And I won't have lost my honor, okay? And this is a correct judgment by me as a human, okay? So, Ali was an Imam, close to being called an apostle, but let's use the term saint. So, the Sunni, who, if I understand correctly at the moment, do not consider, not in a sense of like an Imam as like a leader of like a mosque or like a masjid. Sorry, using non-English words again, like an Islamic church. But, so sorry to say this, I'm not trying to like blaspheme, but just so humans in English have an understanding. So the Sunni who do not believe in Ali as like an Imam in the sense the Shia do, like as an actual like saint, and they don't believe in this type of sainthood towards Ali as an ancestor also, if we talk about 12 Imams in a sense. Okay, so it was Pakistani, once again, I keep repeating this, it was Pakistani and Saudi Arabian individuals which did on the US the September 11th, 2001 attacks, which caused this disaster to happen. Well, you're like, no, well, like the English had done such and such, and the Jews went to Israel, and there's like the death of many Arabs because of the Jews, and this was set in motion earlier. But okay, so the Protestants are like annihilating the Native Americans. The Catholics and the Orthodox Christians are much less disastrous towards Amerindians. And we see the Protestants don't accept saints. Now, the Sunni, who do not accept Imam, Ali, those individuals are also the groups from which, I'm not saying they're the same, because remember, a criminal is different, and a non-believer, an unbeliever, whether a terrorist or not, is different than a believer. But it's from Saudi Arabia, it's from Pakistan, which 2001, September 11th, is being started. Then we have October 7th in Israel, and is eventually going to spread to the Jews if it hasn't already, which probably has. But we have these two issues and these two exact dates humans on Earth are repeatedly explaining, and it seems to be from the unbelievers of God's allowance of Imam to Ali. Okay? So there may be no saint, there may be no apostle, nobody is saying accurately, like, because they say, Ya Ali, Ya, Ya Hussein, Ya Hassan, Ya whatever, Ya Reza. Okay, I'm changing my accent, obviously. But because they say this, okay, they are unbeliever. You are absolutely incorrect. Those individuals could be unbelievers, but to be a believer, you have to believe in God. There's this issue of you cannot constantly say God in Arabic or in English. It's in the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Okay? So the actual process is humans are getting in the way of you using the name of God in vain. Okay? This is who Ali is as an imam to those who are alive at the moment. Okay? I'm not going to get into too many details, but so Sunnis are causing, or not Sunnis, but evil humans, but I'm just going to mischaracterize the situation. So not mischaracterize, but sort of. Okay, so Pakistani and Saudi Arabian individuals are, like flying airplanes into towers, right? Sunnis are doing this. And what have the Shia done? Okay, so Saddam Hussein was a Sunni. Osama bin Laden was a Sunni. Who else do I explain this? Adolf Hitler was a Protestant Christian. Okay, remember this. I'm not an atheist. I believe in God. So these are facts. Those are facts. Okay, now what have the Shia done? Once again, the Shia in Iraq have, they've assisted against, for example, Iran with Saddam Hussein, but they've also assisted the ending of Saddam Hussein's rule, in a sense. Even if it's limited to the mind and hands, okay? The Shia in Iran have ended with hostage taking where all won't have been killed. Not a single hostage was killed by the Iranians, okay? They ended political relations hastily, and the Ayatollah made this disaster of a mistake. The Ayatollah then, Khomeini, he made this disaster. The black individuals, the humans who were released were not slaves. They were not born a slave. If they're living now, they are not a slave. There was a mischaracterization or a misunderstanding in what he was trying to say, because he was actually wrong. Those were not slaves. Those were free humans who were political actors as individuals in a nation which is called Iran, okay? And now you've caused this disaster because it's post-civil rights, and you're explaining those individuals as slaves of the whites. They weren't slaves. They were just as anti-Iranian, if not more, than the white individuals which you continue to hold. Remember? And if I remember correctly, there's like hadith where Muhammad says, do not make difference between Arab and non-Arab and white and black. Like Ayatollah Khomeini, come on with your mind, or like lack thereof, your mind and hands. But there could have been a point to what he did, though there possibly was a point. Anyways, so like the Iranians have like Ayatollah Khomeini use bad word. The Sunni have like airplanes into towers, okay? The Orthodox dared, the Orthodox Christians, even though they were under the Soviet Union, they dared to have Sputnik and go into the orbit around the moon earlier than like Englishmen descended humans and like Protestants. Okay, well, the Protestants have Adolf Hitler, I guess. Okay, so I'm, dramatizing the point, but I'm factually being true, okay? So, another point. The Lebanese, Hezbollah has shot rockets into Israel and has threatened the Jews, okay? Hezbollah is Shia, if I understand, or like supposedly Shia. Okay, the Palestinians, if I understand correctly, I could be wrong, though the Palestinians under Hamas are Sunni. If I understand, I hope I'm not making a big factual mistake, but the Palestinians are Sunni. They went in on October 7 and like butchered, like what was it, like 1,200 humans, people, the Jews, like in like a day, right? Like in a surprise attack. Now compare this to like Hezbollah. There's like conflict, so they have like basic rockets they're shooting into like Israel. I'm not saying it doesn't kill anybody, but like, come on. The scale, the tenacity of the evil compared to like this. Okay, so we're seeing the Shia who believe in an Imam named Ali being more peaceful. So we talk about, the Islamic greeting. If I understand correctly, I could be saying the words incorrectly in English, but may peace be upon you, okay? They are higher peaceful, and they are more defiant of evil humans. Now, it's like, well, they're like anti the Jews. There's a difference between being anti-Israel. There's a difference between being anti-Zionist. Israel and Zionism are not the same. Israel is a nation. Zionism is, let's say, a political ideology. The Jews are a human population and people, God's chosen people. And I do not believe this is allowed to be denied. Okay, so there are different words and concepts. You have to be extreme in your logical understanding of A, B, C, and D are letters is different than A, B, C, and D denote different meaning. They have different meaning. They relate to they're relative to different words. There's different placement of the letters in words, in English language, for instance. But no, A, B, C, and D are letters. They are all the same. They are just letters in English or like in Latin or whatever. Anyways, so now we have parallels to, and you see in the news, as far as I've heard, and as far as I've read, you see in the news Iranian clerics appealing to the Pope for assistance, and the Pope is American-born at the moment, if I understand correctly. He's from Illinois, I think. No, I have to double check. I hope that wasn't incorrect. But the Roman Catholic Pope, and it's like, okay, you've seen there's like a sort of like assistance by the Russian Orthodox, like the Orthodox Christians. There's like an appeal by the Iranians to assistance, but they're not supposed to have like a friend or a protector or an ally in non-Muslims, but they're bringing up the concept, they're using the words, they're using the force of mind argument towards defending themselves, right? By appealing towards, it just seems like overwhelmingly, an appeal towards Catholics and towards Orthodox Christians. And the Protestants seem to be, I guess Englishman is the closest and the highest in terms of, being, let's say, less anti-Iranian. Definitely, we see, for example, in music, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Ed Sheeran with the song Azizam, which could mean something different. But even if the Protestants are the Sunni, it just seems to be the case that so ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, if I understand correctly, because I have this on good authority, ISIS was also apparently Sunni, and they're like beheading individuals. You know what I mean? Al-Qaeda Sunni. Okay, so, and what is the reason for this evil disproportionately happening on the side of, so I didn't mention this, with like, how dare the Soviet Union, who has like many Orthodox Christians, how dare they have nuclear weapons as early as they do? And as many, now with Russia, as many as they do. How dare they? Only the Protestants may have nuclear weapons. Okay, so it's actually it's not humorous, but it is somewhat actually humorous, where we see Shia who believe there was an Imam and, multiple Imam humans, same ancestry, let's say, but they're not accurate if they're ever saying or believing, because they probably are like an unbeliever, or they don't understand. It's likely more they don't understand. There is to be no worship of Ali. There is to be no worship of Muhammad. There is to be no worship of Adam. There is to be no worship of Eve. Okay? There's only to be in Islam worship of God. But God has allowed, in our understanding, a cousin of the last prophet and messenger to also have a religious title for what he did to propagate Islam with his assistance to his cousin Muhammad, a title called Imam, which is relative to apostle and saint in Christianity. Okay, so now what we're finding out is you're also denying in, for example, Judaism. They talk about Purim, but in Judaism, does Book of Isaiah, as far as I understand, I could be wrong, does Book of Isaiah explain, in the English translation I have, Cyrus the Great as an anointed human? He ended the Babylonian captivity, wanted to rebuild the Second Temple. He freed the Jews. And now you're going to say, well, no, he wasn't an anointed human. He's not even mentioned. Why don't the Jews talk about him, about this individual? And it's like, well, okay, if you read it, he actually, like in the Bible, or like in the Old Testament, if I'm using, the Holy Bible, in the Old Testament, he didn't believe in God. He was an unbeliever of God. Okay, was he still not anointed? Was he still, we talk about like his like Bill of Rights. It resembles like the USA, to be honest, or like the United Kingdom, actually, in being like anti-Adolf Hitler and trying to keep the Jews like as like the least amount of time that they were in the Holocaust was likely the intention of the United Kingdom and the United States, disproportionately. This is like like Cyrus the Great and his army were like a 2000 something year, like is it 2500 or so? No, it's not 2500. Is it? Yeah, it's 2500 because Alexander the Great is after. Okay, it's like 2500. So like 2.5 millennia earlier, you have like a similar reality towards the Jews. And I've mentioned in writing, I'm in terms of my genome, I believe this is father's side, but Ancestry.com, I did a test like a decade ago. And I am like very small percentage Ashkenazi Jew. I am somewhat more like higher number of ancestors, I guess, from Syria and Iraq. And I am disproportionately Iranian in terms of my genome and in terms of my ancestors. but because I don't know how the test was done, but I am Dravidian on my mother's side, from the Middle East. Okay, so what is the point? Seems obvious to me. You're not accepting that like there is a religious title called Imam, which Ali will have been found to have been, and now you are committing the atrocities, and the groups, the populations which do not understand any better because they're connected towards denying Paul was a saint. They're connected, if I understand correctly, they're connected toward believing George was not a saint. They're connected towards believing, I have to think of different saints, I don't want to say any obvious saints, but like after the apostles, chronologically. But it's a disaster. I don't want to say it's humorous, actually, but it's a disaster. But the Catholics, even when they're conquering and they're on their conquest, they're like taking wife. They're mixing heterosexually. The Orthodox are, even under the Soviet Union, communism is different. I understand this, obviously. But the Orthodox are anti-Adolf Hitler. They're fighting against Adolf Hitler. They're trying to stop the Exodus, the second Exodus 2 of the Jews after Egypt, way after Egypt, at the moment, chronologically, in time. The Jews have an exodus from a different son of Noah. Okay, anyways, from, let's say, Europe. Okay, the concept is, thou shalt not kill. You have to stop the Jews from having the capability or the need or the desire or the accident of having killed, okay? And it's not being understood quickly enough. This reality is not being understood quickly enough. And lo and behold, the higher peacefully group in the Muslims, the Shia, are the ones standing in the way of the continuance of blood loss through death, through what is to kill, using mainly weapons and weaponry. And you have the Sunni saying, if Donald Trump has said, if Saudi Arabia normalizes relations with Israel, at the moment, when this war is going on, will give them civilian nuclear capability and the possibility of enrichment of uranium, and some, I guess, instances, some individuals are thinking of possibly nuclear weapons, and Pakistan already has many nuclear weapons, and we have a disaster going on, which is so obvious. And I guess one of the points I got to by the end of this video is, you will not have believed in a title called Imam accurately, at the least, who Ali is and was when he was living. And now you are being punished. So David, if we talk about the Bible, if I remember correctly, David has, the women say, King David has, he was David then, but King David has, killed tens of thousands, whereas Saul has killed thousands. Saul's the winner. He killed less. It's like the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill. Saul wins this argument against a human who is David, who becomes a king and a prophet after Saul has passed away. And King Saul wins the argument, eventually. But I guess there's going to be an argument now about the tribes of Israel and Judah and messianic figures, okay, and who are anointed, but I'm not going to get into all that. Anyways, so let me summarize the 6 points I made after this enormously long video really quickly, and I hope you just think this was me rambling on and was incorrect, because I'll be sure to take advantage of this, and I'm not going to be nice about this. Okay, so I should mention one thing. another thing, when I bring up my mother and Mohandas Gandhi and Mahatma Gandhi and how she loved the individual and thought he was a big man. Mohandas Gandhi was assassinated. Martin Luther King Jr. were assassinated, and they were talking about peace and love. Muhammad Ali, the boxer, he did have severe health trouble later in life, but at the end of his fist, his gloved fist in boxing, when he would beat you physically with the hands and his mind, obviously his feet, he was quick on the feet, obviously. But when he would beat you, you didn't dare to kill him. But when they talked about peace and love too much and unity too much, you assassinated them with a weapon. Okay, so, and I believe even Malcolm X, when he was later, he became like more into like the understanding of unity. Like I believe in the autobiography of Malcolm X, he said he had prayed next to or near a white skin, like European descended Muslim in Mecca. When he became more peaceful, he was assassinated as well. Okay, so this is not going to be taken lying down. It's going to be standing, and it's going to be a very forceful response. And I am the higher correct. This is the truth. Okay. So to summarize the points more succinctly, Islam requires the worship of God alone. Okay. No human worship, no angel worship, no jinn worship, only God. Okay. Point 2, I wanted to sort of pull the leg, and if it seems like too much joke, I'm directly anti-you. I will strongly stand anti-you. I am just under 6'2" and I am over 300 pounds, and I intend to exercise and develop my body disproportionately. I do not want to meet you in public. Do not come to my house. I am anti-you. Do not speak against the reality of God. Okay? So some Pakistani individuals on YouTube in Englishman Nation, the United Kingdom, are, I guess one specific, single individual specifically, but are spreading untruth and evil, and it's possibly from misunderstanding on their part. But I wanted to respond. So that's point 2. Point 3, stop being evil. Humans do not understand Muhammad was not the beginning of Islam. You have to tell them it starts with Adam as the first prophet, and the last prophet is Muhammad. Because this is central to understanding what makes Ali also able to have been a holy human, okay, in Islam. Because if you're like explaining like, well, no, like Muhammad was the prophet and messenger of God, Adam was also a prophet of God. I don't understand at this point if he was also like a messenger. I would imagine so. But, the Quran is different than being a prophet or a messenger of God. Adam was a prophet in Islam. He is a prophet in Islam, okay? So, and he was earlier than the Quran was given to Muhammad, okay? By an angel. Okay, so point 4. The Shia are a central point in Iran where Indo-European language is accepting of Islam. If I understand the earliest, possibly, actually, transference into Indo-European language, and not funny enough, but actually funny enough, the earlier humans are actually of Iran who freed the Jews from the Babylonian captivity, because Egypt was obviously different, an exodus. Okay, so point 5. Ali is a Muslim. He did worship God. He did believe in Islam before he passed away. He wasn't just like, and it wasn't like barely a tiny amount of time before this happened. Ali was a believer, and they're gonna say like, we don't deny this, we're aware of this, but okay, he's possibly of the earliest believers, and they're gonna say possibly we don't deny this. Well, okay, going on to point 6, those other individuals all won't have been an Imam. Ali was an Imam, okay? There's no worship of Ali allowed in Shia Islam, but the concept which is to be developed eventually, and we're at a point in history, possibly, the past 6 years or so, where there's enough technology, if we talk about social media, where humans can understand different things that they didn't have access to, and humans can read and write better now. So what's happening is there is now an ability to understand to not take God's name in vain as a commandment. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. In Islam, okay? In Islamic nations, not in Islam, in Islamic nations, and this transference to the Shia will eventually, mark my words, okay? Look into the future. And I don't have a crystal ball, okay? And I've said in Islam, Muhammad is the last prophet, okay? So you'll see that eventually the Shia are saying, Ya Ali, Ya Raza, Ya Hussein, Ya Hassan, because they do not want to take the name of the Lord thy God in vain, and they're using humans who have essentially thrown themselves in the way of taking God's name in vain. Because if you are a believer of Islam, as Ali was, if there was any instance your mind could comprehend the 10 Commandments are valid in Islam, which I'm sure he did believe, you will have done anything as early as possible, and after you had realized, to not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Okay, this is a process which is being developed religiously, and as I explained, to finalize my 6th point, seems to be humans who don't believe in saints are more violent disproportionately in Christianity, and more likely to kill, and violent and aggressive. And in Islam, and you're not supposed to divide the Muslims, but in Islam, the Shia are more peaceful, though more forceful of mind and hands, and they believe in an Imam, okay? And the Sunni who don't are like cutting off heads and flying airplanes into towers and have nuclear weapons and are now giving orders to, for example, the Shia Iranian to fight for Palestine, who are like, Hamas. I'm not saying the Palestinians are evil, though the Palestinians are controlled by Sunni, and now Sunni Pakistan or Pakistani individuals, maybe not Pakistan, want to order Shia Iran to fight for them and get killed and martyred, not for God, but for Palestinians, for Sunni humans. So it's obvious there's like a difference in level, okay? So humans have 2 hands, and if you're gonna make 2 groups of things, because you're trying to say, at the end of my hands, or like with a gun or with like a bomb, I use my hands to drop, that you're going to rule over those who have a higher understanding of what God allows. I'm going to forcefully, with my mind and my hands, be higher extreme than you and higher accurate than you in response. I really hope you see this video, and I really hope you don't dictate to me where I may get my wive on earth. So keep the bullying to yourself and learn truth. Thank you.